Lucy, I'm home. I had to do that at least once during this podcast. This is Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, episode 174. Today is April 29th, 2023. As you can probably tell by the leadoff, we are here to discuss comedian Lucille Ball, icon, legend, broke the ground. We're going to get into it. I mean, it's almost like I say, hey, she did it all, and then the podcast right there. That would pretty much say everything about this woman. But yeah, we're exploring the history of comedy here on Funny the Clown podcast, and they say if you want to be a good comedian, know you the history of comedy, okay? Because know your history, or you're doomed to repeat it, is the old saying. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time, there's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Go there, go green, go fresh, get it shipped right to your door. Yeah, we had a few complaints about the new set, which was kind of just kind of plain, and it was a little bit too plain because I went from doing the big clown graphic, and it was time to change the background, and I went to a plain background of me just sitting in a chair, and a few of the people who watch the audio version, well, I'm sorry, the video version, not the audio version, were complaining. If you want to monetize it, which it is monetized anyway through G Vegas Buffalo Sauce, you need a better background. So I got my comedy collection. Not, I mean, the whole room here is my comedy collection, but part of it's behind me here, so you get to check out my comedy stuff here in the background. In the meantime, let's get into Lucy, man. And I said she was a comedian, okay, because there's a difference between a comedian and a comic, okay. Now, a comic's a guy who stands on stage in front of a microphone, tells you jokes, and makes you laugh. Okay, he comes up with things in his head, funny situations he sees in life, makes you laugh. Where a comedian is more of a naturally funny person, where if you just sit down, they're naturally funny. Not that a stand-up comic isn't naturally funny; they are too. But it's a different art form where you're prepared and say it in front of a microphone. Where if you're going to act out certain situations, and you do like Broadway and live plays and stuff like that, or vaudeville, and on TV and movies, as opposed to which being a stand-up comic, there's nothing like a live crowd. Okay, I don't care. That's why they started having live studio audiences in front of television, because there's nothing like a live crowd to tell you how you're doing. And a lot of comics, they trend both worlds. Eddie Murphy was just an incredible stand-up comedian, and now they're begging him to come back and do some live stand-up comedy because he owes that to comedy, because comedy gave him the stage to make all the great movies we've went on. You want to talk about some great movies? Let's talk about Lucille Ball. Let's see. She got Kennedy Center honors, which, I mean, that's you got to be. You're not just good; you're a legend if you get Kennedy Center honors. They don't go for, like, just, you're a one hit wonder. Yeah, come to the Kennedy Center, we'll honor you. No, 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 no. You get Kennedy Center honors, you're an icon at what you do. Okay. Um, let's see. Nominated 13 primetime Emmy awards and won 5 of them. Okay, which, just to be nominated is like such a honor. But I mean, to win 5 out of 13, if you win 1 out of 13, you're doing good. You win 5 out of 13, unheard of, right there. All right, got not one but 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which I'm not sure why you'd need to, but apparently she got 2. So hey, double the fun right there. Let's see. Career started in 1929 when she got work as a model. And then she started, after being a model, she started performing on Broadway under the stage name Diane Belmont. So which I do. I work with a guy up in New Hampshire, and he's a school teacher. So he has to use stage names because he signs a contract to be a teacher. You got to set a good example for the kids. And if he's on stage and he's getting recorded and he actually slips up and says like a swear word, he could get fired because he has a contract. Him using a dirty word in his act. So he has to be really careful what he put out there and what name he puts it out under. Cause I remember one year the kids, they figured him out on YouTube. They found out his stage name, and they were passing around the YouTube clips in class. And he went and he deleted his whole account, all the work that he had done. He said he panicked; he was going to lose his job. He didn't have a lot of it backed up. He lost a lot of his material, but a lot of different reasons people use stage names. More flashy. I remember, yeah, Rodney Dangerfield. That wasn't his real name; that was his stage name. So all kinds of different reasons use a stage name. Let's see. She started to perform small roles in the 20s and 30s in movies. She was like in the credits, she wasn't like acting in the movie. It's like people would act, and then, back then you'd have like people standing behind you in a chorus who'd like sing to, like a chorus, and in the credits she'd be like chorus girl, that she was part of the chorus, just singing in the background. Not that she was doing any acting, but still, you're getting paid to do what you do. You're getting, you're getting recognition for being in there. Nobody starts at the top. That's the problem in this business. Everybody thinks they start at the top, and you got to do small stuff like commercials and stuff like that before you can really knock it into the big scene. So, taking small roles like chorus girl and singing and stuff like that, which led to a lead role in B pictures. Okay, she wasn't in the A picture Hollywood scene, but something like a low budget film or something. She got to play the lead in it, and let's see. While she was doing the B roles, she met a Cuban bartender named Desi Arnaz, and they hit it off. They eloped in November of 1940. Let's see. In 1950, she ventured toward television, where her and Desi Arnaz created. You may have heard this one, the sitcom "I Love Lucy," and she had two kids with Desi Arnaz before they eventually got divorced in 1960. She remarried in 1961 to a comedian, Gary Morton. Produced and starred in a bunch of Broadway musicals from 1961 to 62. Became the first woman in television history to run a major television studio. That was unheard for women to do back in the day, which, given the fact they weren't even allowed to vote back in the day, running a major TV studio was like one of those unheard of things. But hey, Lucy pulled it off. She produced the TV shows. You might have heard of these: Mission Impossible and Star Trek. And I remember, I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a Trekkie. I mean, well, I'm not a Trekkie, but I mean, I am very into the Star Trek, series and stuff. And they didn't like it. They wanted to. She really fought to keep Star Trek on the air back then, and good thing she did, man. Because I'll tell you what, it's one of the top franchises of all time now. That and Star Wars and the superheroes. It's imagine we would have been robbed of Star Trek if it wasn't for Lucy. So it's good for her for fighting to keep it on the air. And I remember they tackled a bunch of racial issues on there too, where they had one episode where there was two guys, they were half black and half white, and they were fighting that out the whole episode. And at the end, the Captain Kirk, why you guys arguing? You look the same. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm half black and half white. He's half white and half black. And it showed how stupid we were as people, to identify people like that. Then I remember Lieutenant O'Hara, she was on there. And, back then, there was segregation. It was blacks on one side, whites on the other. And, this showed a future that in the future, she was sitting there and she had the same job as all the white people. And she was going to quit. And I remember Martin Luther King himself talked her into not quitting. He said, you cannot leave this show. He said, you show on TV every week that in the future, blacks are equal as, to whites. Then, she went to and said, if it's okay with you, I'd like to stay on. And she stayed on, and the rest is history. So thank you for Lucy for breaking that barrier. Let's see. She reinvented I Love Lucy with co-star Vivian Vance for the Lucy Show. Vance left in 1965. Show continued in 1968. She starred in Here's Lucy, which ran until 1974. And 1985, she took the role of Life with Lucy, but it was canceled after just 3 months. I guess that one didn't. And it was towards the end of her career. I mean, she had her time, and this business is so great, you don't want to leave it. You have your run, and you fade out as you get older. And as big as an icon as you are, nobody lasts forever, but she'll be remembered forever. And I guess after that, she didn't appear on TV again. Yeah, I guess the '80s. I mean, she was very old in the '80s. I mean, her time. We're talking about the '40s and '50s. By the '80s, these kids were tuning in and they see this old lady, but they don't remember, her in her younger days from being the big star that she was back then. Let's see. How did she become the big star? This is always the most interesting part, part of the podcast because we remember the people being the big stars, but you forget that one day they were just average working Joes like us, and they had what was the break that led them to become the big star they were, and you sit there and say, hey, how come that can't happen to me, man? Just everyday person. I get one break in life, and next thing I know, I'm on the hottest show on TV. But let's see, Lucy's birth father died when she was only 3 years old, and I guess her mother had to move back, with her parents. Her parents could help her out, with the kids because you can't do it alone. And I guess 4 years after that, her mom remarried, and her husband's parents, helped babysit while they were out looking for work and working and stuff. And I guess back then they were a Swedish family. For whatever reason, they banished all mirrors in the house except for one in the bathroom was the only mirror that they would allow. And I don't know if this was a thing back then or not, but they caught Lucy admiring herself in the mirror one day, and they really chastised her for being vain. Oh, you're hung up on yourself. Oh, you think you're so much. But yeah, I mean, it just I don't know. Yeah, back then it was a different time. I guess you shouldn't be so into yourself. You should be more worried about, I guess, helping other people. But I mean, yeah, and she said it affected her deeply for several years. That it really really affected her being chastised that hard for admiring herself, which nowadays, ain't nothing wrong. Hey, they say it's a lot harder to pick someone up than it is to kick them down, so it's like she should have been applauded, I guess. But back then it's a different day and age, different things, different rules. Let's see, I guess when she was 12 years old, her stepfather encouraged her to audition for the chorus in a local organization show that he was part of. He was, I don't know, it was like the Moose Club or the local Odds Lodge or the Knights of Columbus or whatever. But I guess they were putting on a show and they needed parts of the chorus. So he said, hey, I'm a member of the club. Why don't you go down and try out for the chorus? And she said she recognized that being on stage was a great way to gain praise. Okay, which I'm a father's rights activist, and I can understand that. I do a lot of work with, that's the reason I always loved comedy, but that's the reason I incorporated, that into my act was, to get people to listen to my message, and it's like, and I've a lot of people, going through the same thing as me. They praised me a lot for, hey, thanks a lot for doing this. I thought I was alone. And, I'm happy to say, no, you're not alone. We're all in this together. So, I guess despite that, I mean, you lose your father at 3 years old. Despite, I mean, nowadays it would be tough enough, especially back then. Women weren't a big part of the workforce; they were stay-at-home mom. I mean, you lose your dad, that's your major income coming into the house right there. I mean, they had major financial issues back then, to say the least. But despite having those financial issues, Lucy's mom enrolled her in a school for dramatic arts in New York City because of her. She had a desire to be in show business. I guess that was Lucy's dream. So, being a good parent, hey, broke or not, we're going to try and make that happen for you. And as we mentioned, she got work as a house model. Um, and I guess shortly after getting work as the house model, she caught rheumatic fever, and she couldn't work for 2 years. So who knew that about Lucy? That she'd take a 2 year break because of just when things are starting to go her way here and get what she wanted. She's got the rheumatic fever, and she's got to take a 2 year break. So, but I guess 2 years later, she went back to the same modeling company, and they hired her as a cigarette girl for Chesterfield, and I guess she became the cigarette girl to promote their cigarettes. Modeling, you model with cigarettes, you do whatever you do. Um, she became a contract player for RKO Radio Pictures, which means she's contracted in if they got some role to call you in on. She's under contract. Hey, we'll call you in for a small role. But let's see. Through this production company, she was able to get some small parts with some major players here. She did a comedy short in 1934 with the Three Stooges, and she did a movie with the Marx Brothers in 1938. I mean, these were just small roles, but just to say, hey, you were in with these guys in any part of thing. Which I mean, she wouldn't even like you'd be listed in the credits like before. You get chorus girl, or if you're an extra, you don't really get credits in the credits. You got to be an actual actress. But I mean, even if you're an extra, you're still in the movie. Her first credited role was Chatterbox in 1936. That was the first one she actually got credit for acting in, for paying her dues and everything else like that. Now she's starting to break some rules where she's getting credit at least in the credits for it. Let's see. She appeared in some musicals with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, which I couldn't tell you what either one of them did, but I do remember the names from back in the day. Those were some big players in Hollywood, actors and actresses. So starting to rub elbows with some big names there on a small level. Let's see. She was one of the featured models in Roberta in 1935. She was with Katharine Hepburn, Stage Door in 1937. Another big name I remember back in the day. In 1940, she played the lead in the musical Too Many Girls. Let's see. She became known in Hollywood as the queen of the B movies, which means she wasn't a mainstream actress, but I mean, if you had like a low budget B movie, she was just everywhere. I mean, there's someone out, outworking everybody else right there. And I can't say, I mean, I wasn't alive, way back then in the 30s and 40s when she was doing this stuff, but I do like, UPN 38 and Fox TV, 25. Back then, they weren't the major networks they are now. Okay, all they were small networks, and all they did was run the reruns of what the major networks, CBS, ABC, and NBC, were running. Once they were done running them, then they'd run them as reruns on their networks. That's how it worked before they became, putting out their own shows. So, I mean, I do remember watching some of the reruns, I mean, my parents were probably more watching the show, and I caught, a few of the reruns, so I know what it was about. But let's see. So in between gigs, she took work in radio to support her income as an actress, because a lot of people say, yeah, there's a lot of nights I can make some good money in comedy, but I never know when the next gig's coming. And so some months I do 4 or 5 shows in comedy, I'm making good money, I could live off it. Other months I do 1 or 0, and hey, what am I going to do to eat that month? So you got to supplement your income, when you're doing this sort of thing, because you never know when the next role is going to come up. It is good money when you get the role, but the wait in between is kind of hard sometimes. 1942, she appeared opposite Henry Fonda in The Big Secret, another big name in Hollywood she's working with. 1948, she was cast in Future Husband on CBS Radio. Which back then radio was the big thing. TV was this new thing that had just came out. They weren't sure if it was going to last or not, and it was actually said TV was a fad back in the day. It was kind of, yeah, it's just a fad. It's going to come and go. Then everybody back to listen to the radio. Nobody thought it was going to stick around. I mean, obviously, it became bigger than radio, but back then, radio was the place to be, and TV, there was this newfangled thing. The radio show was very successful, so CB asked her, could you develop it for TV? Which she was more than happy to do, because I mean, TV's more money. Let's see. So she developed it for TV, and she put Desi Arnaz in the sitcom as her husband, and CBS really balked at that. They didn't like the idea. They said America wouldn't accept a redhead white woman with a Cuban husband as a couple on TV. This was like big none. Nowadays, that'd be mild for TV. Back then, whoa, we can't put that on TV. They'll be up in arms. So when the TV network wouldn't accept it, they took the show and they started to do it for a vaudeville act. They were traveling around the U.S. doing it, and I guess the live audience were accepting it. They found it funny, and it had great success. So CBS saw the success it was having and said, all right, we'll pick it up. They put it into the lineup, and as we can say, hey, I Love Lucy, best is history. I guess, by the time that they had picked it up from vaudeville and they put it on the air, it was like, yeah, she was happy it was on the air, but she was having trouble with her husband, Desi Arnaz. Their work schedules caused them to be apart a lot of the time, which, being in Hollywood's very demanding. You don't see each other a lot. To maintain a relationship, it's over the phone. It's you're falling in love with a stranger again because you haven't seen him in so long. And I guess Desi Arnaz, he always had an eye for the other girls. He was the slick talker, smooth talker. So I guess that's a nice way of saying he probably cheated on Lucy quite a few times. I mean, I'm not saying he did, but they're putting it in the 50s terms nowadays. Yeah, he was a son of a bitch. He cheated on Lucy, but not the first guy, I guess. I don't know. All right, let's see. Keeping up with myself here. Let's see. She went on, as we know, to create a television dynasty. I mean, it was just like one show got done, she'd start another, almost like Cosby. I mean, he had the Cosby Show, then he followed up with Cosby. Then, I mean, before he had all his problems, I mean, Fat Albert. We all grew up listening to his stuff. You can judge him every which way to sideways, but we all watched the stuff he had. He was on TV for longer than most people could have dreamed. And Lucy did it before him. She was the dynasty. She was the one who stuck it out. Usually you get one sitcom, then hey, see you later. Your history. I mean, to stay on TV for as long as she did and have as many hit shows as she did, really unheard of in that business. As we mentioned, first woman to own a production company. She was the first person to perform with more than one camera and stuff in front of a live studio audience. Let's see, first person to have distinct sets adjacent to each other. So I mean, she was the first to do a lot in the TV business. They really created a lot of stuff through her. She did a 32-week comedy workshop out in Hollywood one time, and she said, "You can't teach comedy. You either got it or you don't." That became one of her great quotes right there, which is true. You can't teach someone to be funny. You're either naturally funny or you're not. You either good. I got a friend of mine in comedy said, I guess it's part of your brain, and some people, that part of their brain for comedy is more active than other people's brains are active in that part, I guess. So apparently, if you're a comedian, that part of your brain's pretty active. You do a lot of stuff that other people don't get. I guess you'd have to be into comedy to get it. I don't know. But let's see. I Love Lucy just dominated the ratings. I mean, there wasn't even a show that was even close. So everybody in America was tuning in. It was must-see TV, which you don't have a lot of that nowadays. I mean, I do. I stream a couple of shows. I mean, I like the Star Wars shows they got coming on. I like the Star Trek shows. I mean, those are must-see TV for me. But I mean, back in the day, like when the Dukes of Hazzard was on or Happy Days was on, you couldn't go online and stream it whenever you wanted. You had to be home at a certain time during the week to watch this. It was must-see TV, they called it, because the whole family, Friday night, 8 o'clock, we all knew we'd be there watching these shows because those were the shows of the day. Where nowadays you can just go online and watch them whatever you want because we're so busy, with our lives nowadays that family time has become a thing of the past. That's kind of a sad thing where, I mean, it's great. Yeah. You can do whatever you want to do now in life. Because I mean, in the olden days, it was like if your father was a shoemaker, you were going to be a shoemaker. You couldn't do whatever you want in life. So we've evolved to a time where everybody can pursue their dream and do whatever they want to do in life. But in gaining that, we've lost what it means to be a family and have times like that where you all sit down together and just spend time as a family. So you gain one thing, you lose another. During the show's production breaks, Lucy and Desi Arnaz, they started 2 feature films together. Forever Dating and the Long Train. I can't read that word. Long something there. Look that one up. I don't know. Somebody tell me in the comments what I'm talking about here. But anyway, they had two feature films together, and geez, they were. Sad when you had the Hollywood couple like that, and I guess it's kind of sad where when they break up, you expect them to stay together forever. But that's Hollywood for you. Even nowadays, it's the same thing. Let's see, 1967. This is one of the most interesting things. Me preparing for this podcast, this one I found right here. 1967, Lucy sold her production company that she started to Gulf and Western back then. In today's dollars, it would have equaled to $138 million that she sold it for. But you know what they renamed it after they bought it? Paramount Pictures. Yeah, you ever heard of that? Yeah, they've kicked out a few good films over the years. Well, Paramount Pictures, Lucy started it, baby. They may have renamed it, but that was her baby. She started, and they still today they got the franchise. Well, I think Star Trek's, probably the biggest money maker at Paramount. That's the basis of their franchise. They're able to do everything else off the money they make off that franchise. So I mean, and Lucy's the one who kept Star Trek on the air. So wow, how much we owe to Lucy just for all the entertainment. I said this around Bronji a bunch of Rodney Dangerfield a bunch of times. While the great comedian, all the great comedy he gave us, he was also great for bringing us the next generation of the Roseanne Barrs, Sam Kinnisons, Tim Allen's. I mean, Lucy. Not only did she give us so much entertainment in a lifetime, but she left Paramount Pictures, was brought a Mission Impossible, Star Trek. I mean, just a production company that still to this day is one of the top producers of movies. Let's see. She hosted a radio show briefly. Let's Talk to Lucy from 1964 to 65. Kind of like a Dear Abby thing where you'd call in and just, talk to her, I guess, on the air. I guess if you want a trivia question, here's one. She did an interview once and she said that, true story, that she discovered underground Japanese radio signal. This was during the Japanese War. And she picked it up through the fillings on her teeth. Okay, was actually picking up the radio signal, and she could hear it on the fillings in the teeth. So she went to figure out what was going on, and I guess the government got involved, and they found the illegal Japanese signal through her teeth that they was they're wearing. And I remember almost when I was a kid watching an episode of Gilligan's Island where I think they took that premise, and I wonder where they got it from. Where I think someone, it might have been Gilligan or someone, was the radio was tuning in through the fillings on the teeth on the island, and like that's where they got it. Lucy's story. Uh, and as I said, she left the generation. She became a friend and mentor to Carol Burnett, which I mean, Carol Burnett went on to be one of the icons of TV too. So if you wonder how she, not that who we got to thank, I mean, Lucy was one of her mentors right there. So she gave us the next generation too. And I do remember this one from my era, 1980s. She hosted a retrospective of Three's Company, which Three's Company, that was big TV back in the day. And I do remember watching that, and her hosting and showing all the funny clips and giving her perspective on it. So, it was good for the kids of the 80s to see the Lucy star from the 40s, during one of their favorite TV shows. Lucy's last public appearance was 1989 at the Academy Awards. She appeared with Bob Hope, and at the end, she was given a standing ovation, and rightfully so. At the age of 77, later on that year in 1989, she passed away, and we lost an icon in comedy, but you know what? She left us behind so much, and thank you, Lucy, for all the laughs. And I say, you have a stressful day at work, you come home, you need something to laugh about. Laughter is the best medicine. And, no matter how stressful a day at work you had, you can't wait to get home and turn on Lucy. So, she can give you some comedic relief from, your everyday life. And they say we can't solve your problems, but we can make you forget them for a little while. And Lucy made you forget about your problems while you're watching a TV show for a few hours. And I do remember the guy who played Mr. Scott on, he was the engineer on Star Trek. He said that a lady contacted her and told him that, you know what, I have cancer and it is so painful. I'm in so much pain. But you know what? One day a week when I tuned in Star Trek for that half hour, the pain went away. I didn't feel it for that half hour because she was so consumed by Star Trek. That's a cool story right there. So, hey, be some laughter in somebody else's life. Tell them a joke. Tell them tune in Funny Like Clown podcast. We're exploring the history of comedy, and tell them stay funny because that's what I do, and it gets you through life. Good night.